Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about balancing a wheel before you put it back onto the customer vehicle once it's ready to go. A couple points we need to make sure of before we set up the balancer for our wheel is we want to make sure none of the weights are on the wheel still. So we've taken the weights off the rear and we've taken the weights off the front. Another thing that you want to be sure of is that this tire is at the correct pressure. If it's not at the correct pressure, you're not going to get a true balance, and that's going to cause issues. In order for this tire to sit true and get a good balance. So we've selected the proper cone. It's going to go in behind the wheel, and then after I have that on the machine, I've got a nut on there that I'm going to anchor the wheel onto the machine. So I take this cone, I'm going to put it onto the machine. I'm going to take my wheel, put it up on the machine. Now this part, I want this to sit as center as possible. So as I am securing this, I'm going to make sure the wheel sits straight on that cone in order to not get it to bounce around and get an improper balance. So as I tighten this, I have some of the weight of the wheel in my left arm. So I snug that up. Before I start, I'm just gonna move the wheel, have a look, and see that it's sitting on there properly. Now I've done a visual inspection. It appears to be on there where it needs to be. So now I'm going to turn on the machine. And before I can balance this wheel, I have to let the machine know a few of the parameters. So I'm going to come up to here. It's got some options. We're going to do a two-plane balance, which is static and dynamic. So to start this wheel, I'm going to start up at this button here, and it wants to know how far away the inside of the rim is from the machine. So I'm going to take this, put it on the inside of the rim, and I'm going to take a measurement. 62. Thank you. And it is 62, so I'm going to type the measurement into the machine, and it comes up as 62. The next measurement, the machine would like to know how wide the wheel is. So there's these calipers on the machine. I'm going to use this to determine how wide the rim is, not the tire. So I place each one of these pointers on the inside of the rim, and as I look down, it looks like it's about 6.25. So that I type into the machine. And the last measurement that it's going to want is the size of the rim. And usually we can find this on the side of the rim somewhere, as this one here says that it is a 17-inch. So what I do next is I type in the 17 into the machine. And now that I have all my parameters, it should be ready to balance. So I'm going to close the lid. I'm going to let it spin, and it should come up with some numbers to let me know how much weight I need to add to both sides. So the next step is I'm going to close the lid, and this machine is going to spin the tire on its own. While I close the lid and the tire spinning, what the machine is going to do is it's going to take a calculation of the static and dynamic imbalance of the wheel. Once it comes up with a certain number, which is going to be in ounces, it's going to indicate where I need to put the weights on the rim. So the machine has calculated the balance, and before I even open the lid, if I look to the screen on the right, this is telling me the outside needs 1.25 ounces. If I look on the screen on the left, it says it needs 1.75 ounces. And in order to find where I need to install that weight, what I want to do is lift the lid, and then I like to start with the inside. You can start on the outside or the inside, it's preference. I like to start on the inside. I'm going to turn this until I see that this number is at 0. Once this number is at 0, that tells me I need a 1.75 ounce weight to put on the inside of this rim. So I've got a 1.75 here. I always double check to make sure that it is the weight that I need. because if it's not going to be balanced properly. Then I take my hammer to put the weight on. On this machine, it has a line. Once I'm at 0, it tells me if I center the weight on that inside line, I should be right where it needs to be. Now at this point, if you want to check, you could close the lid again and make sure that your left screen for the inside of the wheel goes back to 0. I'm going to continue on and do the front side, and I'm going to have it check the balance all at once. So on the right screen to do the outside of the tire, I'm going to do the same as the inside, get this number to 0. And once it's at 0, this one's a little bit more difficult to find center. I need a 1.25 ounce weight, which I have here, and again, I'll double check. It's a 1.25 ounce. I like to take my hammer, have my number at 0, and I line up my hammer to the front, and that way I know that this should be where my weight goes. So now that I have both the weights on that the machine requested, before I finish, I need to double check and make sure that this inside and outside of the wheel balances to 0. So I can hear that the machine has done what it needs to do. I look at the screen and it appears as though we have a successful balance on this wheel. Now a couple things I just want to touch on before we say goodbye is that before you put on your weights, there's a couple things you need to make sure of. You need to make sure you have the proper weight, whether it's a steel or an aluminum weight. You need to make sure also that you know where the weights go, because as you may already know, some rims have stick-on weights that go in certain places. So knowing where the weights go, the type of weights, and how to install them, crucial for a successful tire balance. Thank you, everybody.